Alright, you guys, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. And this is the number one place you find exclusive insights, usually from people who are solving real problems in business and in life. I'm your host, Prosper Tarovinga. And if you're watching this and you've maybe ever felt like you don't quite belong in the career that you chose, or you've had to fight to get the results that you want, or maybe work twice as hard to get half of what the other people in that industry are getting by people not taking you seriously, then today's episode will definitely resonate with you, because today we're going to be talking about resilience, identity, and what it takes to succeed in industries where you actually have to, fight to be seen, or you might be feeling like an outsider. And if you're looking for inspiration or practical advice, or maybe proof that your background doesn't have to limit your future, you're obviously in the right place again today. And make sure you subscribe on whatever platform that you're watching this on, because every episode that we bring to you, we're bringing you people who are changing lives through their work. Now, I'm really excited about today's guest, and I want to welcome to the show Louise as a party. Now, Louise, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are meeting Louise for the very first time, she's the founder of Louise as a Party Coaching, where she actually specializes in life coaching for tradeswomen. And I really want to paint a picture for you. You know what I mean? She has a heavy mechanic apprenticeship, which was obviously, achieved in a very male dominated industry. So you can imagine spanners are flying, engines are roaring, and there's just sweat, blood, and tears happening. But somewhere in the middle of that, Louise found her biggest source of support. And one of them was pole dancing. And we're going to hear all about how that manifested and how she's utilizing that, experience in her apprenticeship to now help other people. And if anything, it reveals something powerful about Louise's journey, which is the importance of strength, confidence, and just finding your identity in spaces where you're not often required or appreciated, or maybe where you are a minority. So sit back, relax, because today we're going to be exploring Louise's journey through the trades, what led her into coaching, and the struggles that tradeswomen face that most people never see, and how she now helps women build confidence and actually thrive in these environments. And as is always, this show, we just want to make you feel like you're part of the conversation. So if I can ask whoever's watching this right now, in the comments below, tell us, have you ever worked in an environment where you feel like you didn't belong, or you were not accepted at first? Let us know in the comments below, because I think your story might actually empower or inspire somebody else who's watching, and help them go through their day. All right, Louise, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. Take us back to maybe the beginning of your story. What actually first led you to become a heavy mechanic apprentice? I mean, girls that I know who probably would have wanted to be a princess, a nurse, or a teacher, or something like that, but you wanted to lift heavy things.
Yeah, that's it. And I think from a really young age, I felt a bit trapped by the stereotypes, and I really just wanted to do something that I enjoyed no matter what anyone said. And the kind of seed for that started was on my family farm. So my parents have a primary production farm where they grow tomatoes currently. And I was always working with my mum and my dad, hands-on, whether it's picking, packing, repairs, riding around the farm on the motorbikes just for fun in between. I was always hands-on, always outside. And school just wasn't for me. I just didn't I just didn't like it. I didn't like sitting there being told what to do about all these random things that I actually didn't really care about at the time. And I feel like a lot of teenagers can really relate to that. But what I decided to do was have an exit plan. I was out of there as soon as I could. And one of the ways that I had seen people get out of there was through apprenticeships. So I decided that I wanted to become a mechanic. At the time, it was like, okay, I want to be a motorcycle mechanic because I used to also ride and race dirt bikes. And I was like, yep, this is where we want to go. And in year 10, I did work experience in all of my school holidays. And I ended up going to a careers expo in the second last term of school where I met Sarah. Sarah at the time was a first year heavy vehicle mechanic. She was the same height as me, the same build as me. At the time, we were both blonde. And she encouraged me to do work experience at her work, which I did and loved it. One of the pivotal points there, like the reason why Sarah was so important, was at that same careers expo, I also had two other very memorable conversations with people. I went to one stand with my dad at the expo and they were like, we wouldn't want our daughters working here. We wouldn't recommend it for you. And I later found out that male apprentices had been sexually harassed at that workshop. Went to the next stand. The guy at the stand lectured me and my dad for about 10 minutes about how I couldn't be a mechanic, how I was too small to do the work, and I just wouldn't make it. I wouldn't be able to move the big bikes around, so therefore I couldn't fix them. So meeting Sarah after those two conversations was really pivotal because her existence literally disproved everything that guy was lecturing me about. Like I knew I could do it, but that belief was starting to falter a little bit. And then I met Sarah and I was like, obviously I can do it. She can do it. So I ended up actually getting a job at her workplace and I worked there for 4.5 years, and me and Sarah actually worked together for 4 years of that time, which at the time was a bit of a rarity. I was 15 when I started that apprenticeship, and that was in 2012. So having one female in a workshop was kind of a bit rare. And then there was two of us. And then about 2.5 years in, 3 years in, there was actually three of us working in that workshop. A qualified girl come over and started working in our workshop as well. And my experience from that was quite good, having other girls around, but there was also other little things that was happening in the workshop. Little bits of bullying, bits of self-doubt. Mental health was kind of a bit rocky at different points. Confidence was high at some points. Confidence was very low at some points. But yeah, that's kind of the entry into the industry.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for drawing that sort of a picture for us, because so many people are not exposed to what you were exposed to for them to have an understanding of who you've become. But let's just go back to the farm a little bit, because you said right now they're sort of working on tomatoes and they're bringing that up. When you were growing up, what was the typical, like just go through a typical day? It could come across maybe 3 or 4 days, but what would be a typical day for a farm girl like you be like, waking up in the morning up until you go to bed?
Yeah, so waking up, typically dad would have kind of his plan in his mind. Mum and dad will have a plan in their mind, what needed to be picked and what needed to be done. Usually picking would happen first because the weather was cooler, so we would do that. Some things that we were growing at the time, so we had a period of time where we were doing cabbage, cauliflower, zucchini, broccoli. So there's a few different things, lettuce, and typically pick in the morning. Some things were packed straight away as they were picked. Otherwise, we would pack them afterwards. After we had done all of that, then we would head into any repairs or improvements that needed to be done. So little things, maybe service a tractor, fix some pipes, fix some leaks. If there was nothing to be serviced or repaired, this is where we usually pulled the motorbikes out and just rode around the farm for a bit of fun. And then later that night, dad used to go at about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning to the markets where he would drop off the produce. And at that time, he was selling the produce as well, and sell the produce. And then everything would start again the next day as we went through. So yeah, pretty much in my younger years, I was mostly following mum and dad around, thinking that I was helpful. I don't know if I actually was, but then more in those teenage years, I was a worker on the farm, actually helping produce and repair and contribute.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that. Now, were there any other, you mentioned your mom and your dad, were there any other family members that would have also been there helping out, on your growth?
Yeah, well, I had my younger siblings. They were coming up after me, and there was like people that would come in and work on the farm. My mum's siblings and my dad's siblings also had their own farms. There was actually a period of time where they were all selling at the market together, my dad's family. But on the farm, not really too much. I had started to see like some cousins and stuff doing apprenticeships a few years ahead of me. So I was in a community where apprenticeships and trades were pretty normal for the boys, but I didn't really see myself any different to boys and girls. I was doing what I wanted, and I didn't really let any of that kind of get to me. I actually tried to like rebel a lot against what they said. You know, if someone said, do this, it's ladylike, I was doing the absolute opposite any chance that I could get.
Absolutely. Because what I was trying to extrapolate there is if there were any other role models, because you did mention Sarah's name quite a lot, in as much as you really latched onto that person because they were unique to what you'd been brought up with and everything else that came along with it. And obviously, school would not fit in such an active girl's life. I mean, you're pulling things apart. You literally know where produce comes from. Whereas if you ask my girls, they think, you know, if you want to buy lettuce, it's from Coles or Woolies. You literally had to plant it and things of that nature. Now, for a person like you, could you maybe let us know how schooling was such a drawback based on the street knowledge that you already had about how things actually work?
Yeah, I think when I couldn't connect what I was learning at school into what I was doing on the weekends after school in my family's business, I just wasn't interested. If there was a topic that I was interested, I was really good at maths. I really enjoyed science. I did agriculture. In my design and technology subjects, I did woodwork and sewing. Like I love the creative process and I love doing things with my hands. And like some things I just wasn't interested in. I was just like, why am I spending my time doing this? And I actually tried to leave school sooner. I asked my parents if I could just leave and work on the farm when I was about in year 7. And they were like, no, you have to stick it out to at least year 10, which was when the apprenticeship plan kind of became come to fruition, which was like, this is my way out. But yeah, at the time, like hanging out with friends. I used to read books under the table, which is funny because I never used to like English, but I used to love reading stories. And yeah, I used to read books on the table. In math, I found math pretty easy. And I ended up what I would do was I would flip a new page in my math book and write like question like 11A. So it would look like I had already done half the topic, and I would read under the desk. And the girl that would sit next to me, she wouldn't tell the teacher on me, but I would help her with the things that she was struggling with. So we had this kind of unofficial deal where I wouldn't do any of my maths work, still get A's on all the tests. I would read under the table and the girl next to me would still get help. And I don't even know how I managed to do that. I think I did that for about 2 years, and I still ended up getting in the highest maths class when it became graded after that. So there's moments when I look back and I'm like, how did I pull that off?
Absolutely. And from what you've said, I mean, there was markets involved. There was even in the farming, putting things together, mathematics would be of use, but some of the other subjects were not going to be, of use to you. And there's something about education. I'm going to say this with almost love and respect. It just teaches people to conform into some sort of mold, which obviously you already were, unschooled already off of that. So maybe that would have done that. Now, I viscerally believe representation matters. Okay. And you explicitly said when you saw this Sarah lady, you sort of latched and gravitated towards her. You also mentioned you both were blonde at that particular time. Is it that you saw yourself or the future you in this particular person that you then decided this exactly resonates with me?
I think I had known beforehand that being a mechanic was what I wanted to do. I think in that particular afternoon at that career expo, my confidence had taken a few dings with people saying that it wasn't for me. People were actually really believing that I couldn't do it and doing my best to convince me and my dad that I couldn't do it. That meeting Sarah after those situations had a really big impact because she was doing it. Like she didn't have to say anything. She didn't have to do anything. She was literally just there sharing the company that we both ended up working for, that she was working for, they a fairly large company. They were always at a lot of careers expos, taking apprentices to talk about their experience. Sarah was just there talking about the experience that she loved. She wasn't doing anything above and beyond. She was just existing. And at that point in time, I was kind of running out of steam a little bit, I suppose, with trying to get an apprenticeship. And she was there doing it. And that kind of gave me that final boost to be like, okay, let's do work experience. Let's apply for this job. And I ended up getting the job working at her workplace. So I think the timing was really important for that one as well. And Sarah was just out there sharing what she loved.
Absolutely. And we always have to look out for people that can show us a different world than the one that we're used to. Now, you got into this apprenticeship, but what was the moment when early on in the apprenticeship where you realized that this journey might actually be a little bit tougher than I expected?
I think my mental health really played a big part in that. I think there was I was actually having this conversation this morning with a girl where 95% of people are great towards females in the workplace. They want females in there. It doesn't bother them. They just want someone doing a good job. They treat everyone the same. But there's this 5% of people that are sometimes a bit against it. Some of them are kind of people with weak egos that are feeling a bit fragile, where they've kind of really held on to that thing where men are supposed to be the provider. And if I can't provide, or if someone is better at providing than me, then my self-worth is down. So that kind of weak ego side is probably 2% of those people who are against. Then you've got, I found about 2% that would kind of sexualize my existence, believing that I was really only there for their entertainment, just in general in the world. And then 1% that truly believe that women should not be in the workplace. And the thing is, like, these are like 5 out of 100 people. The weak egos are pretty easy to brush off and put them onto there. The sexualization, it's kind of like, as long as you're not physically near me and I don't feel physically unsafe, like, go over there, you're just being annoying. But then the people that really believe that you're not supposed to be there, if depending on how insistent they are, sometimes they just stay away from you, sometimes they just say a few little remarks and move on. But it depends on how much you attach that in your own head. And there was a period of time where I was just repeating these few little comments that had been said. I was repeating them to myself over and over and over again, which took a big chip on my confidence, that heightened my anxiety. And I wasn't focused on the mechanical work that I loved. I was focused more on these comments and trying to prove these comments wrong, which started to lead me astray a little bit, where my priority wasn't being good at my trade. My priority was trying to be liked. And that period of time maybe lasted for about a year. And I managed to kind of pull myself back into it. Not after I got a final written warning in the workplace. So I kind of really strayed from that path and, put myself back on it. It did take a bit of effort. It was something that I felt shame for a really long time, and something that I really kind of healed after my apprenticeship when I got a little bit older, being able to be like, okay, Louise in her apprenticeship was doing the best she could with what she had. She was a teenager. Teenagers' most highest priorities are typically to fit in, and you happen to not be in the school place, like the school environment, when that was pretty normal. You're in an adult environment. So you would judge as an adult with the teenage goals, and being able to kind of be like, yeah, it was a moment. And one person said to me, like, you were 16, you did something dumb. Everyone does something dumb when they're 16. Move on. And they said it so bluntly. And I was like, oh, okay then. All right, I suppose it's fine. And kind of managed to keep going.
So was there now a need to constantly prove yourself? Because like you said, there was all those, remarks that were being said to you. So you wanted to prove them wrong. Do you find that many women working in trades also end up having to constantly prove themselves and deal with that sort of pressure, which takes them away, like you said, from the actual work that they're meant to be doing?
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes it can. And when it happens pretty often, and one thing I like to check is are you repeating something in your head that was said a long time ago. So a lot of girls, when they are trying to get an apprenticeship or get into anything that's typically like blue collar, male dominated, male populated, whatever language you want to use, they do have people who tell them you can't do that. People, when you hand them a resume, they laugh at you. But then we get into a workplace where we're appreciated, wanted, and valued. But sometimes those voices come with us. And we keep putting that pressure on ourselves. So one of the things that I first ask people, and one of the things that I check in with myself, because my brain still has these patterns, is like, is anyone actually saying it to me now? And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. And if they are saying it to you now, do they actually matter in the scheme of things? Are they your leader? Do they have an impact on your career progression? Or is it a coworker with a weak ego who's trying to bring you down to make themselves feel good because they're actually putting in the bare minimum and hate the fact that you're actually good at your job? So really kind of having a look at that, because yes, there is some times where you actually need to prove to your leader more than the men do, because that leader has an unconscious bias or is sexist. And sometimes it is us in our own head repeating something that someone in the past had said to us, a parent, a teacher, but the parent or the teacher or the old coworker actually does not have an impact on your actual job today.
You see, what you're saying there is sometimes you literally have to work twice as hard to get half of that which other people might be able to accomplish. But how important is that level of self-awareness? Because then if you can then detach yourself from what is being said to you and literally dissect it in the way that you said, because I don't think some people will be able to do that, because then it's an attack on their person.
Yeah, that's it. It's one of the things that I kind of call a circular problem.
Right.
You want to be good enough, so you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and it might cross into this area of perfectionism where it has to be perfect or it's absolutely not good enough. So you're trying to be perfect. And if you're anything below perfect, then you start to beat yourself up. But what happens when you're beating yourself up is that you're not actually concentrating on your next task. So it's highly likely that your next task is also not going to be perfect because you're not concentrating on it. And then it goes back and you're in this cycle. And it's usually a I say usually because sometimes there is a manager that might put this pressure onto you, but sometimes it is a self-perpetuating cycle. It does take a little bit of effort, and it can be, depending on how long you've been holding on to this belief, it can actually feel like almost physically painful to let that belief go. That if you are okay with doing work that is good and not perfect, then you'll actually have more focus to be better for the next job. Because typically there is kind of levels of things being quote unquote good enough. You've got your perfect, you're very good, you're okay, you're borderline, and then you go into not good enough, you're unsafe underneath that. So there's about 5 levels where your work is actually good. And we need to make sure that we're not going perfect or shit, because doing work that is okay or good is usually, you know, maybe the second time we've done a task, or we might be having a bad day, or our good is actually somebody else's 110% effort, and we're actually doing a lot better than we think. But if we have that all or nothing thinking, that puts a lot of pressure on ourselves, which usually then leads to not doing a good job next time, because we are having that backwards focus and that beating ourselves up.
Absolutely. And I like the way that because then once you start looking at it from that vantage point, not everything is an attack and not everything is, deserves your response. Because like you said, there's different levels and there's different people that are putting all of that pressure in front of you. Now, most people usually then don't necessarily concentrate on work. They have some sort of an outlet. Was there something that you sort of, gravitated towards during this time that sort of took your mind away from all of this?
Yeah, I did. When I was a 3rd-year apprentice, a friend actually asked me to go to a pole dancing class with her. And I was like, you know what the hell? What is there to lose? I'm in for a new hobby. I did actually used to do ballet and dancing, like hip hop and acrobatics a little bit when I was younger as well. So I was looking for something a bit more adult to do, and something that was actually at a time that I could make after my apprenticeship, after my work. So I did this pole dancing class with her, signed up for a term. She ended up stopping after the term, and I'm still going 12 years later. It actually really helped to have an environment that was not connected to anything else in my life. I would walk through the doors of the studio and nobody knew what the hell was happening outside. And we had that kind of thing for everyone. And after a bit of time where we were just like kind of learning different moves together, so really embracing what our bodies could do, celebrating what they could do, cheering each other on. And in that period of time, like I said, one of the things that I experienced was that sexualization. And that was something that was happening where I was wondering if my body was ever going to be good enough. Being good at my trade meant I was going to be more muscular, which meant I wasn't meeting a stereotype. And I was kind of, it was almost one of those circular problems for myself. I want to be good at my trade, but that means I'm muscular. That means boys won't like me. But then also I want to, and I was in that kind of, that was my teenage brain. That was the highest priority for it at the time. And it was really confusing. But then being able to be in the pole dancing studio with women of all different ages, some were mothers, grandmothers, uni students, all different walks of life, we were celebrating what our bodies could do for us. That was the most important thing. Our bodies were carrying us through the world. And being able to embrace that and recognize that my body is for me and other people's opinions are neither here nor there. That was a really important lesson that I took from the dancing studio, as well as just having that space where nothing else mattered. My mind was free for a whole hour. Nothing I did in that studio was going to affect my work life, my personal life, nothing else. So I might as well go in with a smile and have a good time. And that at least 1 hour a week where I was boosting myself up out of a time where I was pretty much a bit depressed and fairly anxious most of the time, having that 1 hour a week led to me having, you know, half an hour excitement before and that feeling afterwards, which then led to me be happy for the whole day. And then it carried on to then fill out that space with better emotions, more positive emotions for the rest of the week.
You know what I like about that? Because you're expressing yourself and falling in love with who you are and your own body. So if anyone is going to say anything to you, they're going to have to shout louder than what is already happening internally based on who you already believe you are. Because now I'm feeling this whole thing was now teaching you confidence, strength, and even self-belief that you then carried on to your work.
Yeah, that's it. Where it was like my opinion was what mattered the most. And then taking into that account, I was in the apprenticeship space, I was getting feedback from others. So in the dance studio as well, it was the feedback from the teacher that mattered. She could give me the guidance that I needed. And then being able to pick those people in the workplace who was actually going to teach me in the workplace in a useful way that I could learn, which is actually going to be productive to my growth. And being able to take that positive teacher role model from the pole dancing studio and find it in my workplace was really helpful as well.
Can only imagine. And at what point did you then realize that who I'm becoming could literally be of help to other tradeswomen who might be going through similar things? Because you had literally become the person that you yearned to become, and now you're just passing down the elevator so that others can be do and have that same self-belief that you had acquired for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was a fourth year apprentice, I was put forward to compete in the regional world skills competition. So the world skills competition is kind of like the Olympics for tradies. It's run regionally, nationally, and internationally. Yeah, pretty much. I've got my medals are, let's see, up there. So my
Congrats.
3 medals. So yes, I have 3 medals from each of the 3 levels, regionals, nationals, and internationals. And that pushed me kind of into the limelight where I was getting interviewed and I was being asked similar questions to what you were asking me. Do women need to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good? Where are the girls? You know, what made you be so resilient? All that kind of stuff. And at the beginning, I didn't really have an answer because I was just doing what I loved. And, you know, I was head down, ass up. You know, I had enough battles in my own head to kind of, I didn't really know what other people were doing because I was like focused on getting through. And being put in this situation where I was being asked, then I started to look for answers. And then when people started to ask me, you know, what do you see your career moving through next? I started to have this answer of, I don't know what I want it to be, but I wanted to help other tradeswomen. And I didn't really know what direction it was going to go in. And I ended up becoming a trade teacher. So I got my Cert 4 in training and assessment and got a job at a private training center where I was teaching mechanics. And one of the things that I thought I was going to get out of it was that I'll be a female teaching mostly men. I had a few female students, but those men will then go back into the workplace knowing that a female could do it and having an impact on the industry that way. After about 2 years of doing that, I kind of felt like it wasn't enough. I was seeing that the boys were struggling, the girls were struggling, things like workplace flexibility was coming in and being talked about, but more as a buzzword rather than an action. And parental leave for the boys were getting cancelled, and they were really upset that they couldn't be there for their partners and have their work-life balance. The girls were, being bullied, isolated. And this is kind of during COVID times. So I remember doom scrolling. I think somehow I was doom scrolling on LinkedIn, which is probably the most productive doom scroll you can have. But there was this guy on there, and I remember him so vividly. I don't know how the algorithm put him in front of me. He was coaching middle-aged corporate professionals who felt stale in their job. And I was a 21-year-old or 22-year-old. And I was like, oh, he's got a free webinar. Like, I don't have class on Friday. Let's watch this webinar. And he was talking about coaching, and he offered like some free coaching sessions, and I signed up for one, and we had a chat. And I think I ended up he had like a webinar series during COVID. So I watched all of that. And then I jumped on another free call with him. And I was really getting a lot of benefit out of coaching. Like, I had done a fair bit of therapy to kind of get me through that anxious time and that kind of depressed time. And I was looking for what was next. Like, I'm like, cool, I'm functioning, but there's got to be more than just functioning, right? And that's where coaching started to step in, and it really started to help me. And then I was looking around, I'm like, cool, who can help me as a woman in a male-dominated space? Who can help me as a tradesperson? And I was seeing business coaches mostly. And I'm like, I don't need a business coach. I need like a career coach. I need something. And I couldn't find it. And that's when I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to be that person. And I decided to, with the audacity you have in your early 20s, to start my own business in 2021, doing life coaching and mentoring for tradeswomen and tradies. I got my master practitioner of life coaching. I did that over about 2 years. And I really enjoy those tools of coaching. And now I combine mentoring and coaching to help my people, really trying to get people to come up with the answers themselves with those coaching modalities. But then also, if they are stuck and they literally don't have information, I can share some of the things that I've learned. And then we pretty much then coach from then on what their thoughts on the idea that I have pitched to them. And I've had some really, really good results. The girls being able to find their own path, which is often very different to mine, but them being able to come into the space with someone who understands what sexism is, understands the thoughts that go through your head when someone is whispering behind their ear as you walk, like behind their hand as you walk past, like those types of things, that understand the pressure that you end up putting on yourself and you don't really know where it's coming from. Their shoulders relax, they become more open, they can then solve the problems that are in front of them.
Absolutely. And you would understand that fish do not see the water that they swim in, and neither can we see the air that we breathe. Okay. So for a lot of people, and a lot of maybe women, let's talk about women right now, because that's who you help. When they enter into these industries, they just maybe blind to all of the things that you have now come across, and half of the things they're happening to them. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of women end up reporting certain things years after, when the evidence has gone and they can't retrace everything else that would have happened or piece together their story, which means a lot of these stories just get thrown away due to lack of evidence. So coming back to the fish not seeing the water that they are swimming in, the women that you help, what are the hidden struggles that they deal with every day?
Yeah, so some of it is that self-pressure. Some of it is that unconscious bias, that bullying. Some of it is purely just trying to find a job. Some of them, so there was a study done that it roughly takes a male to find an apprenticeship 14 days. But for a female, it typically takes over 100 days to find an apprenticeship. And that rejection fatigue is hard. And once you get that job, I think I mentioned before, like all those comments, all those rejections that you had before you found a job, sometimes they stay lingering with you. So that self-pressure is really high. the burnout that we sometimes face if that self-pressure lasts for so long, or if you actually have where it's beyond the self-pressure, where you have a manager that is expecting twice as much for you, that usually leads you down a path of burnout. And some of those girls, if it's taken them that long to find a job, sometimes they don't believe that they can find another job, so they have to put up with this shit. But often that's not the case. You've got some experience under your belt. Your resume is not the same as the last time you went looking. So that's another thing. So pretty much, yeah, building up the confidence to either stand up for themselves or get out of a bad situation is one of the things we work on, recovering from burnout. And then also realizing that our future planning is not the same as men. So when we have a male mentor telling us the direction we want to go, our future planning is often got things like possibly maternity leave in there and stuff like that. And we want to make sure that we're going in a path that we want to go on. And not saying that every woman should have kids or not have kids, but knowing that answer for yourself is really powerful. And I think it's something that doesn't kind of come up as much in men. So if you have a male mentor, they're not considering these things. But it's really important to know, kids or no kids, when, what your body is capable of. It's really important to have those answers for yourself, because then you can have that in your future planning as well.
Absolutely. And obviously, I like how you say, you know, the way we plan is completely different, because, you know, the way I would be thinking is, yeah, am I making money and things of that nature. So there's a whole different way of thinking of things. And speaking of way things have always been done, you know, I've been in Australia 14 years now, and there's usual statements that I hear, and people say that in passing, and I'm thinking it's even harder and even prevalent, especially in the trades, you know, like, oh, should be all right, mate, or toughen up, or things of that nature. Now, or if you want to work in the trades, there's something that I heard, you gotta drink cement. Is that like a beverage during a smoke break, or
Yeah, I have what was it? Have a teaspoon of cement and harden the F up is a common
oh,
saying.
not I thought it was a whole cup then.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you'd be able to get that much down. But yeah, there's a lot of these sayings saying that we need to be tough, that meaning that we like saying that we need to tolerate a lot of bad circumstances, hard workplace. But often the job is physically demanding enough that putting on all of these extra things like bullying, harassment, poor communication, bad leaders, it's being resilient to things that can be solved, which I have a bit of an irk with resilience. I believe resilience is important, but if you're being resilient against a problem that can be solved, I feel like that's almost where you're crossing the line of bullying in the toxic workplace. Like if your workplace is saying, okay, someone left and we're applying, like we're getting applicants for a job, can anyone take a higher workload for a month while we're filling this job? It's like, cool, be resilient against that, you know, put in some extra hours. But if someone said, okay, we've had 3 people leave and you guys look like you're handling the whole workload, we're just going to stay like this forever, we're not going to replace those 3 people. That's something that's preventable, that's overworking for literally no reason. And I don't believe we should have to be resilient against stuff like that. We shouldn't have to be resilient against leaders giving us poor feedback. Leaders should have training to be able to support their teams correctly in that sense. So we want to, the boys shouldn't have to toughen up either. None of us should. And the reality is it's not working for the boys. The construction industry has the highest suicide rate. It's not working for the boys either.
Now, obviously, you've found your space, and you're obviously working with people and helping them be, do, and have this, you know, happier existence. But, you know, there's always a question: does this actually work on humans, or is this just good on paper? Do you maybe have, without maybe mentioning names, a person, or, you know, somebody who's gone through your coaching who is maybe went from feeling stuck or invisible within their role, and now they're owning their place within the industry?
Yeah, so I have multiple girls that have gone from feeling not valued, feeling like they're going to exit the industry, that's the only way they're ever going to be feeling better, to becoming award winners, state and national award winners in their industry for the work that they do. I've got a few girls that returning to work from maternity leave, coming into the industry, paving and having those part-time workplace conversations, having those workplace flexibility, then becoming supervisors years later because they've laid those foundational stones to believe that they belong in the industry, they can ask for what they need. girls that are running their own businesses because they couldn't find that workplace, but they took what they needed from the workplace, the qualification, the licensing, the experience they needed, and started their own business and are creating safe workplaces for others. Girls that confidence was down, people weren't supporting them, picked themselves back up again, tidied up their resume, and are now in a job that they love where they're really, really valued. So I've got a fair few of those stories where it actually works in the workplace. I also am a part-time TAFE teacher. It works for me in the workplace. I stand up in front of that class of 16 boys. Most of the time, there's very few girls still that come through, and I belong there. And those boys, the way that I carry myself, those guys also know that I belong there because that's what I'm meant to be doing.
Absolutely. And from what you're saying and who you become and how you're helping people, it really resonates because I obviously believe we are here to live, to learn, and to contribute. So, in order for us to live the best lives that we need to live, we need to learn how to be able to do that. And then once we've learned enough, we need to send the elevator down and help others along the way, which is basically what it is that you're doing. So you might have done a heavy mechanic apprenticeship, but you also went on an apprenticeship on life, and now you're just helping people figure it out. And I feel like you're just literally giving people back to themselves, because if somebody really wants to be a tradeswoman, they shouldn't be stopped based on scenarios and circumstances around them just because they haven't been given the tools that you now have. Now, if somebody's watching this and they're really enamored with your story and maybe want to learn more and maybe, be a part of what you're doing, what are your offers and how can people be a part of that?
Yeah, so for any individuals, I do offer one-on-one coaching. So you can do a free coaching consult with me. That's on my website. You can also reach out to me through my Instagram, Louise as a Party Coaching. I'm Louise as a Party Coaching on Facebook as well, and Louise as a Party on LinkedIn. So feel free to message me. For any businesses wanting to pass on practical tools to their employees, you can also reach out to me through my website and we can talk about workshops running for your people. I also have a podcast called Building Confidence where I share a lot of those tips and tricks that are practical that you can implement straight away. And I've got a Facebook community called Tradeswomen Owning Their Power, which is free for anyone who is in the trades, wanting to get into the trades, and people that are true supporters of tradeswomen, no matter what their gender is. That is a community for them.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, check out for those links in the comments, in the description below. And speaking of comments, I also wanted you to write a comment about, if you've ever faced a challenge in your career, and tell us what actually made you stronger. If you've got any tools or systems that you've utilized in order for you to get out of that funk. It could just really help somebody who's watching who might be going through the same thing right now. And as Louise is now doing, just send the elevator down as well so that you can help others do and have a happier existence. Now, Louise, obviously we'll have all those details in the show notes there, but what we don't have is you introduced us at the start, this young girl who was obviously very good at mathematics, reading under the table, and obviously didn't find her life after school as inspiring as the life that you now have. So we could have young girls that are looking for their Sarah right now, and you've become that. What would you say to people that are on their path and they're not really fitting into the round or square holes that the society has shaped up for us?
Yeah, remembering that fitting in is not the end goal. Creating the life that you want is typically the end goal, whatever that looks like for you. But fitting in, it can feel like not fitting in can feel uncomfortable, but it's not the end of the world. Once you become who you truly are, you will find the people that you fit in with.
Absolutely. And obviously, we've mentioned Sarah's name 3 or 4 times in this show right now. If you would be sitting across to them right now, what would you tell her about the person you've become?
Yeah, I would probably just say, thank you for being there for me, for doing what you love. And yeah, I really appreciate what she's doing. She's actually managing a workshop herself at the moment. I believe. We're not in super close contact, but I keep a little bit of a tab. So yeah, I'm really proud to have known her on my journey.
Absolutely. And obviously, based on what you've shown us today, there's going to be a few girls that will, or boys that will come around and say, Louise, because of you, I did not give up. So thank you. And now that you've brought us into your world, what's next? What can we now be on the lookout for and celebrate with you as you progress in your career?
Yeah, so I'm trying to reach as many tradeswomen and as people as I can. So I'll be out and about online, in person, kind of spreading the good word of the trades, what they can give to you, and also of coaching, no matter what walk of life you're in, how powerful coaching can be to help you be yourself in those spaces.
Absolutely. Well, what you just gave us was a powerful and inspiring conversation. So thank you so much for the journey that you have taken and the time that you spent with us on the Online Prosperity Show today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Because I feel like your journey just reminds us that, sometimes the very things that make us feel like outsiders are actually the things that prepare us to be able to help others in the future. So for those that are watching right now, no matter where you are, no matter what it is that's happening to you, I want you to pay close attention to that, because one day you'll have a good story to tell, not only in your life, but maybe on the Online Prosperity Show. So if you're watching this and maybe you're a tradeswoman, you're looking for support, maybe confidence or direction, I think Louise is somebody that you should absolutely get in touch with, and I will leave all those details in the show notes below. So I want you to reach out, follow her work, and then learn how she's actually helping women thrive in industries where they're often underestimated. And to everybody who's watching and listening, if this episode really helped you see your journey differently, I want you to stop right now and share this with somebody who needs to hear this story. I know you've got a sister, an aunt, a mother, a daughter who is maybe trying hard to stand out in their work or to actually make a life and a career for themselves, but they're being underutilized or marginalized just based on who they are. I want you to share this video with them, because I think Louise's journey could actually be that right conversation that could change their entire direction. And if somebody has shared this video with you, I encourage you to just give them a hug the next time you see them, because they've seen something in you that you possibly haven't seen as yet. And while you're at it, subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, because you don't want to miss out on episodes like this that have a life-changing episode. And speaking of, life-changing message, and speaking of life-changing, I want you to stay tuned, because the next episode we are going to be talking about ideas that will help you live a happier and more fulfilled existence. Until then, keep building, keep working, stay strong out there. Bye for now.